We had some incredible advisors along the way, and probably if we had really heeded and understood the value of what they were saying in the first 3 months, we could have saved ourselves some heartache and pain. But that's really our experience. There's a lot of it. It made us what we are and got us focused and allowed us to provide the service we do.
Yeah.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we are joined by Howard Cleveland. He is the co-founder of PeopleCap Advisors. I think you put it, a recovering JD or attorney, and you've been in the industry of coaching for over 15 plus years. Welcome to the podcast, Howard.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, pre-podcast, we were just talking about like your experience and all that. It's not every day that we see an attorney kind of jump into the coaching world. So I guess what made you want to become a coach and turn a business out of it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I got into, even from the very beginning, getting into practicing law, it was really just the psychology of people and how that worked. And so I went into labor and employment law and worked with leaders really on what not to do and helping them stay out of trouble. And then when I moved out of the practice of law and started consulting, it was really helping people grow and companies that were going through high growth, navigate that people and culture and leadership side of that. And through that, there were a lot of conversations with founders and CEOs. And there were a lot of books, a lot of tips and tricks that we would give. And the biggest inspiration for me was around that time. I had always been a high achiever. I'd always sort of been successful and gotten a lot of stuff done and was sort of praised for my ability to figure things out quickly. And those skills kind of disappeared a little bit. And I found myself running around and, trying to work longer hours and figure things out. And so I tried everything that I could figure out, read books, listened to podcasts, went to seminars, and eventually turned to a coach, really because I didn't know what else to do. And I found a coach who was just amazing. I found somebody who was a neuroscientist, PhD, and I thought, well, she's going to have all the answers and she'll be able to tell me what to do. And that's not at all what happened. She had questions and she was curious and she explored and she wasn't giving me, the answer necessarily. She helped me kind of find the answer. And I was so amazed by that process because I'd always been a consultant. I was a consultant, people came to me as an expert when I was practicing law as a consultant. They came to me. And so this idea that you could really make progress and help somebody out in a different way was amazing. And so I left that experience and was really like, this is something I want to explore. I want to get good at this. This is what I really want to do because coaching's it's a different thing. It's an art. And I was really cognizant of the fact that there's a skill set involved that I didn't have. And so I just dedicated myself to trying to figure that out. And then that's where that came from. And so for me, we've got this Meg Crosby and I who co-founded PeopleCap together, have a consulting practice. And then out of that, working with leaders, just the coaching started coming just sort of naturally, and it developed into its own practice area for us that I had. And it's been watching that blend of coaching and consulting has probably been the biggest turning point. I don't know if it's a landmark, but as a consultant, I felt like I was supposed to have all the answers. And I was working with clients that were far more experienced in their industry, far smarter than I was. And there was a lot of pressure to have the answers and to be able to provide them fire, if you will. And then on the coaching side, I felt like true coaching was asking questions and only asking questions. And that seemed really, really hard. And both of them created a lot of pressure. And so when I was talking to my coach and sort of expressing this, the question was, why? Why do you feel compelled to stay in either box? Like, this is something you bring both experience. So why not marry those? And that's really where the consulting practice became more coaching influenced and the coaching practice became more consulting influenced. And so somebody described me at one point as a Coach-Sultant. And I guess that's another realm I play in. And so, the business just grew out of that.
So many questions. And one of the things that is on my mind is like, through your experience, what do you feel like the advantage of blending the two methodologies together of consulting and of coaching?
Well, I think it's really on the consulting side in its purest form. It's doing some sort of very temporary analysis and coming in with a direction and creating a report and helping people. On the coaching side, it's really figuring out what is the best solution for that person in that moment, given the resources and considerations. And the benefit has been that we've added a step to our consulting, to where we do the analysis, we take our experience and come up with recommendations or sort of directions as we distill. But then we go back and, in a very curious coaching format, just have a conversation. This is kind of what we saw. What are you seeing? What does this look like from a recommendation standpoint? And what are you able to do at this time, given your resources and where you are in your stage of growth? And so it's been much more co-creative and much more of a partnership. And then on the coaching side, there are instances where it's beneficial to be able to take off coaching hat and just say, hey, I've worked with leaders along the way that have experienced something very similar. Would you be open to hearing kind of about what those experiences were or kind of where they went? And a lot of times, kind of like I was when I came into coaching, people are lost and don't really even know what they don't know. And so sometimes providing that experience and actually giving some direction is really helpful. And so that marriage for me has been really powerful.
Speaking about, well, kind of like a marriage, it's more of like a partnership. You mentioned that you have a co-founder. And so I'm kind of curious, how did you find your co-founder? And what made you want to start this practice with a co-founder versus starting it solo? Very curious about that.
Yeah, so my co-founder is Meg Crosby, and she's from Memphis as well, and we knew each other in high school. We weren't in close circles, but we went and had our lives, and she ended up with an investment firm in New York and then moved to California with a tech firm that got acquired by Google. And so she was in human resources helping Google in their acquisitions and really looking at it from a cultural side. And so she had this front row seat to growth and what the stages of growth, but also the importance of culture as it went through. And then we reunited working for a nonprofit on a people issue, and we connected. And as we were talking, we were looking at how do you bring our experience together, and we realized it was really complementary. She had seen it from the HR side and not just the compliance side, but she had seen it on the culture side. And when we think about people, a lot of times we think about there's defense, and that's all the things that you need to do, your policies, your things, but then offense or transformational. And she had seen it from both sides. And I had been primarily on the defense side, helping companies stay out of trouble, helping them comply with all of the various agencies and the like. But I had been moving and seeing the impact of really investing in people and leaders. And so my practice had gone from fielding questions about what do I do with this employee to how can you be a better leader so we don't keep having these issues. And so when we talked, there was just a real opportunity that we saw to share kind of what we had seen from different perspectives, because I had a national client base. She had been on both coasts with people who may not have been exposed to it. And over time, our niche has become working with high growth companies and that are going through stages of growth and are really challenged through that and taking them not from an operational standpoint or a financial standpoint, but recognizing that their strategy for their people is just as important as their financial strategy. And so
You bring up a really good point. And so you mentioned leaders. What are kind of the challenges, like the common challenges that you see with these businesses and all that?
most of the time, I mean, we boil it down to its very core. It kind of goes back to the old adage of, what got you here won't get you there. And a lot of the businesses that we deal with are founder led or fairly, still in that stage and they're transitioning out of it. And what is needed in the next stage of the business is not what made them successful. And so the biggest challenges are evolving as a leader, taking the organization through that change. And so some of it's just setting the next vision. And some of it is that your culture that really worked early on may need to evolve. And helping explain that how to become better leaders, how to put together a leadership team, and then really build up their talent through hiring and development. And at times separating and liberating people to go and do something that's more aligned with their purpose and passion. And so it's helping those leaders and those organizations navigate the stages of growth. And through that, individual leaders are facing a lot of the same challenges.
Yeah, that's interesting because, all right, now that we kind of understand who you help and the problems you help them with, and I love that expression that you said, like, I think it's Marshall I forgot his name.
Smith.
I always screw up his name. Yeah, Smith?
Yeah.
Goldsmith?
Yeah.
I always screw up his last name, but he always has that famous book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So you decide to work with your co-founder to tackle these issues. Tell me what the marketing is like. How do people typically find you? What kind of marketing are you guys doing at the moment to grow your practice?
That's a fascinating question. We have been really fortunate to have our business model really run through referrals. And we're both very involved in the community in various ways, either through nonprofit organizations or providing mentorship and I give away a lot of coaching, and a lot of cohort programs. And then having exposure, people will then reach out to us. I mean, we've recently, in the past 6 months, written and published a book, and that has created a whole PR, thing and some activity around that's been really good from a marketing standpoint. But most of it is very relational, and it probably, from a business standpoint, if we were going to scale, should be more automated and the like. We're really interested, for better or for worse, in doing the work. And so to scale, you kind of have to pull yourself up and hire a lot of people under you and let them do the work, and you kind of guide the business, as they say. We love those one-on-one conversations. We love doing the projects. And so for us, we haven't developed some sort of well-run marketing machine and marketing department. And we've been fortunate that the referral network has really worked.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious, like, since you run most of your business off referrals and then you're doing a lot of great things what kind of challenges have you kind of noticed when it comes to finding clients, especially in the early stages?
Yeah. The biggest challenge that we had early on was not knowing who our clients were, not knowing we were trying to be all things to all people. And we really thought that if we can put ourselves out there as being able to help everybody, then we're going to have this massive, range of clients. And what we found was that, we didn't really have any niche or any specialization. And so we were just going out, so broadly. And I think at first we probably expected, very quickly after we started, maybe within days of starting, we had our first client, and within a month we had a massive national client. And we kind of thought that's how it was going to work. And so early on, it was just not understanding that there is a business aspect to it, and trying to be too broad. And so as we have niched down and really figured out where our passion was and what we felt like our purpose was, once we got into a niche, then it's become a lot easier and we've had a much better impact or a much greater impact.
Sounds like a bit of trial and error from your end. Would you say that's kind of correct about finding your niche over time?
Absolutely. I mean, we have joked that, one of our primary values for new businesses or solopreneurs could be saving them from all the mistakes that we made. We have gone off in directions that we felt like were best, and then you realize maybe not, and retracted and gone through. So we are certainly a model in some instances of what mistakes you can make, and then a model in other instances about resiliency and really taking the time to figure out who we were and who we wanted to be.
One interesting thing is, okay, so people are kind of finding out about you. They want to work with you. They end up working with you. One of the interesting things that you said earlier in this podcast was like, we actually love doing the work. And so what do your coaching modalities kind of look like? I think you mentioned a bit of one-on-one. Do you have group trainings, organizational trainings? Like, I love to hear like the different models that are working for you, or the primary ones at least.
Yeah, and so it really splits into two categories. In the consulting and the organizational work, we offer just due diligence, team and culture due diligence. So a lot of the organizations we're working with are growth equity backed. And so either private investment companies or growth equity companies are looking to come in, and they want us to give them a look at the team and culture and leadership, and not as a go or no-go decision, but sort of we're interested in investing in leaders and we really value the culture. So what are the strengths and how can we support them? Sometimes there's an issue. The company is kind of having trouble adjusting to that next stage of growth. And so we go in and do an analysis and really do a deep dive into what's contributing to that and what strengths do they have that they can leverage to get through, and kind of what are the areas to focus on. And for us on the organizational side, we have 6 areas that we look at, and we call them the 6 imperatives. And so do they have a sharp focus? Do they know what they're doing? Not in a way that has just been articulated, but people really understand their role and how they fit into it, and then calibrating their culture. And for what your strategy is, everything flows from the strategy. So what does your culture need to be? And there's a lot of emphasis a lot of times on, do we have a good culture? And the West Coast is doing this or the East Coast is doing this. And Edgar Schein, who's sort of the godfather of culture, once said, a culture is a good culture, and this isn't a quote, but a good culture is one that's effective in helping you create your strategy. So you take something, an organization like Meg was part of with Google, and then you take, say, the military. Both of those cultures are very, very effective in getting done and accomplishing their mission. But if you switch them, it would be a nightmare. And so there's not a perfect good culture. It's really, is it effective? And then looking at strengthening leadership and how do you build a cohesive team as you add people and you grow from the outside. And then, as you add people, things become more complex. So how do you elevate your talent is the 4th. And then, what do your structures need to look like? What's your org structure need to look like? And what do your systems look like? So does your compensation, your reward system actually advance the culture? And then amplifying communication. Because when you're small, it's pretty much top down. A lot of it's hallway conversations. And then as you get bigger, it's looking, how do you avoid silos, or how do you get, people's input from the bottom and sort of multi-directional. So on an organizational side, those are the things we're looking at. On the coaching side, there's a lot of one-on-one, for say like 6-month, engagements to really make an impact. But there's also a lot of team coaching and helping build teams, and not just, the sort of the cohesion, but having those open, authentic conversations. And then I lead, a cohort, like 8-week cohort of like 8 people generally, on either helping gain career confidence and clarity or understanding how to become a middle manager. And so on the coaching side, it's a little bit of a blend, but it's a lot of one-on-one. That's where my passion is. If you're looking at scaling a business, that's also the challenge, is how do you do the one-on-ones, or how do you do the small groups and really scale? And that's just a decision that I've made, that I enjoy the personal interaction more than I want to scale the business.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We'll talk more about your ideas and like your thought process around like scaling. But One thing that really sticks out to me, it seems like the work you do is very intimate. It can get really complex sometimes. And so I'm kind of curious, like, how do you manage your client capacity and all that at the moment?
I think it's really a question of where do we think we can do and remain effective and have an impact. We're not into, as some people have called it, collecting logos. No, we're not looking to have as many clients as we possibly can. We prefer long-term clients with relationships, but we also prefer short-term projects to where there is a discrete scope and you can get in, provide value, and then disconnect until the next issue. And we found that longer term engagement sometimes becomes stale and complacent. Some organizations are able to do those exceptionally well. For us, we really prefer a long term relationship with discrete projects that we can help out. And so for us, it's as much about managing emotional and passion. And so, to the extent that we can take on clients that are in our niche, identify with our passion and our value system, then that's the way that we really manage that. And so, it's been fun to go through, but even our values and what we're looking for, like over time, one of our values has been we want to have fun and we want to enjoy our clients. We want to work with people who are humble and curious and committed. And that's what we're looking for. And so getting a project just to get a project is not of a lot of interest to us.
I see. I would also like your input on this because we've been talking about things like culture and stuff, and sometimes it's hard to put a number on these type of things. And a lot of the coaches listening to this, they struggle with things like pricing strategy and all that too. Of course, Howard, you don't have to give any hard numbers, but if you're open to it, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts about how you structure your pricing for your offers. Is it project based, value based, retainers? What have you kind of tried, experimented with? I'd love to kind of hear like your journey with pricing.
Yeah, one of the biggest sort of progressions and evolutions of our pricing has been tying our billing or our fee structure and sort of cadence to milestones. And so they're, setting up, these are certain steps, not, just, some of them are just steps, some of them are value. And then we will then divide the project fee up front. We are almost exclusively project fee. I came from the legal world where you build hourly, and I found I didn't like keeping up with my time in 6-minute increments. But I also, while I didn't ever work with anybody that this was an issue with, also found there's less incentive for a consultant to actually wrap something up if it's just hourly. And sometimes you get lost in what the goal is. That was just a concern of mine, more so that I didn't want to keep up with my time. And so looking at where we think the value is and what we found that the value is very early on, we undervalued our expertise because we had it. And it came very naturally to us. And so, things that were very valuable to a client came naturally to us. And so, it's been a few years, but I found one of our very, very first proposals, and it was like 17 pages of everything we could do. And for basically hundreds of dollars. It was like 9 months worth of work. And because we were like, oh, we know how to do all of this. And there's this great Steve Jobs, it was a conference and it's kind of going around on video, but somebody stands up and asks him in a relatively judgmental way, like, there's all this technology out there, Java and the like, why is none of this in your computer system? And basically, why do you think you're worth being the CEO if you're not including all the technology? And his response was very much like, the goal of providing value is not to put everything into a package and go try to find somebody who fits it. It's finding the clients that you really want to work with and finding out what they need and then helping them find out what they need. And that's been, as we have honed our packages and our offering, that's been our guiding principle. Is not, you start out and you're like, how big does this book need to be credible? And, and then it's like, where do we add the most value in the time that really fits what their ability to digest is. And so,
Mhm.
you know, it's not, it's not like we have 50 recommendations that we come in with every time and it's just like here and there. And sometimes the best recommendations are the fewest because that's the capacity they have. And they've got so much operational pressure and so much external pressure that really focusing on the people, it's easier to take one thing and knock it out of the park than us saying, oh, we know so much, here are 15 things. With coaching, it is a little bit of a trial and error. I probably err on the side of underpricing
Mhm.
myself, and it's not really a confidence issue or do I deserve to price this because I have the experience, but it's an accessibility issue to me. There are a lot of middle managers and frontline managers who are struggling, and they're not necessarily in the position to have an executive coaching arrangement in the same way that a large company could do it. And so for me, it's an accessibility issue, and where can we make this in a way that it's valuable, but also something that people will take advantage of? Because I believe in the power of coaching.
Yeah. It's really interesting. There's a few things that stick out to me. One, it's kind of funny to see the evolution of that and how you pretty much structured your pricing just like a consulting firm, honestly. So rather than going the law practice of like retainers and all that, it's really, really interesting. And I loved how you were talking about the client experience of that pricing too, as well. So I thought that was really interesting. With that being said, one thing I am very curious about is where do you want this coaching business to take you in the next few years? You mentioned kind of scaling a little bit, but not really. But I'm kind of curious. Do you have any secret dreams, big ambitions? Would love to hear.
Yeah. The project that has been on my desk for too long, which is really my passion project, is a program called Confident Leading. And it's a cohort based program for women professionals that are really designed as both a leadership program, but also an empowerment program. A lot of my one on one clients are women leaders and women professionals. And one of the biggest challenges that I've seen my clients face are the stories that they tell themselves. And some of the smartest, most accomplished people that I've associated with aren't necessarily as confident as they should be and don't fully recognize their strengths. And so helping them recognize their strengths and leverage them, but also gain clarity and confidence. And then dealing with some of the issues about just how do you have influence in the rooms where decisions are made. There's a lot of talk about getting a seat at the table. And while that's where you would ultimately like to be, that is a defined table a lot of times. And what the goal really is having influence, and having that, just identity and personal brand and connection with your personal and professional vision. And so having that program in its iterations, it at one point looked like a sort of open to the public mass, like almost seminar type program. And that's obviously a way to scale it. But that's just really not where my passion is. And so having very small cohorts of 6 to 8 people, that is a program that I would really like to expand beyond myself. I've had several coaches that are interested in helping, and that is a way to scale that without changing the dynamic. And that intimate connection is finding coaches with a shared vision who can help that on the coaching side. On the consulting side, there's really not a plan to scale that. I mean, we love what we're doing. We love how we get to do it. If the opportunity arises, and we wouldn't be opposed to scaling, but there's not a plan to, hey, let's see if we can get this to 10 in 3 months and 50 in 2 years. That's not really a goal of ours.
So let's talk about the coaching side then. I guess like as you're thinking about maybe hiring potential coaches, scaling up this kind of like cohort based or group coaching type of offer, what are some challenges or bottlenecks you're kind of noticing in this season of business right now as you're scaling that?
I think for me personally, the bottleneck is exactly what I coach a lot of clients on, is spending more time trying to get it perfect than getting it out. And then sort of second guessing, is it good enough? Is it going to add value? How do I make this the best it is? Over time, the way my coach described it, it's like you've basically built a McLaren in this that has everything that you can think of. You've kind of lost exactly what you were looking for, which was the clarity and the accessibility. And so for me, it's getting out of the sort of thinking and the planning and into the action. And so my biggest barrier in it has been myself. I've got some great coaches that have already expressed interest. I've got, all the pieces are there. It's just really pushing it out because it's something that I haven't done before in this scale, because it is a marketing. It has to go. It's a lot of cold marketing. It's a lot of exposure. And so for me, it's part not knowing what to do, but also just part sort of internal challenges. And so I'm sure as I get through those, there might be other challenges, but it's me at this point.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that vulnerable side of your business too, about like what's going on, your thought process, realizing it's the marketing and all that too. So thank you for just sharing that. I would like to play a game with you, Howard, if you're open to it.
Okay. Yeah.
It's through the lens of business investments. So, a lot of coaches listen to this, they invest into other coaches, training, team members, masterminds, a lot of different things, right? And so I'm going to prompt you with 4 phrases, and I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind, okay? What was your first business investment? What comes to mind?
I think it was the startup cost for our consulting business would have been that investment.
When you said the startup costs for starting the consulting business, like what kind of things come to mind? Is it like the website, or is it like, I'm kind of curious about some of those initial costs.
It was that. I mean, for us, the biggest investment we had was a printer and a 20-foot cable. So we were borrowing space in a room. And so it was like, hey, here's the cable, you print that out, or I'll print this out, and then we had the opportunity to move into a really nice office space with conference rooms and, the reception desk and the like, and investing in the technology that went with that space. And so those initial investments were, they were truly investments that were, more than the, few $100s it takes to actually file the paperwork.
Okay. Next prompt. Last business investment you guys made.
In the publishing of our book was primarily in getting that. We had the opportunity to self-publish, and we're actually sort of encouraged to do that. And when we were working with a group. And when we got together our draft, we knew it needed work, but they were like, oh, this is great. And we're like, we probably need somebody to take a look at this and really give us a critical eye. And so we invested in an editor. And then when we got done, she was like, I think you can get this published. Let me give you a couple publishing companies and apply to the first 2. You won't get accepted probably because they're really, really selective, but they'll give you great feedback. And we got accepted by the first 2 and chose
Awesome.
the one
Congrats.
that is, thank you, chose the one that is the Inc. magazine publishing arm, and got published, and then had the opportunity to work with an amazing PR team. And so that has been an investment, because the purpose of the book really is to serve and to help share our message, not to create, some hundreds of thousands of book sales. We've been very pleased with the success we've had. It got the things. Number 1 hot release. We hit bestseller status. We've had some of those accolades, but that wasn't the purpose of it. And so that's been an investment in both our business, but also in our clients.
The way these can overlap too on the next prompt. Best business investment.
I think I would come back to the book, and for different reasons. One of the things that we really came out of Running the Gauntlet is the book, and just, helping leaders run that gauntlet of high growth. But one of the things that came out of it was the value of assembling a team of experts. We could not have done it. And so we really benefited from pulling in and having the resources of people, which is the same thing that we talk to our clients about. is that, at some point you just run out of experience. Like you've taken it as far as you can go. And so you benefit from outside perspectives and outside expertise. The other piece of it was in doing that is we really had to get clear on sort of what our message was and what direction we wanted to go. And for us, it was, we were working hand in hand with the editor, but we were also working very closely together and establishing that accountability and writing and really digging in. And so Meg and I became much closer, just personally and professionally, through the process. And so that investment from just a core of the business standpoint and the relationships and the strength of our leadership has been immeasurable. And so I think that would be our best. And certainly that's the most recent one.
I love that answer. The book was so impactful for you. I can tell it was a major piece for you guys.
It was.
Last question. Worst business investment that you kind of wish you got your money back from? I know there's always silver lining, but yeah.
I think it was probably the office space that we expanded into. We were probably looking at what does it look like to be a business, and probably overextended ourselves a bit in that when we had the opportunity to downsize and really focus on the business, then it really started to thrive even more. And so I think that, one of the things there's a book called Profit First. And
yes.
And we're big proponents of Profit First, but we discovered Profit First after. Profit First helped set us up. And so it was really, it was really that idea of just we spent before we had necessarily, or we were in that position and didn't, in a small business, the economies of it, just as Profit First said, your income ebbs and flows, but your expenses stay the same. And
yeah,
once you raise them. And so for us, moving into a profit first mentality has really helped us.
I'm glad that you shared that book, by the way. That's awesome. As you reflect on your different investments over the years, right? I guess I'm very curious, how has your decision-making process and what to invest in changed over the years, if at all?
I don't know that we really sat down and been intentional about selecting investments from early on. I think it's from early on, our first quarter of being a business, we invested in outside coaches to come in. And actually, I'd put that as a very close second to our best investment, is having somebody come in and really help us understand how we work together and how to leverage our individual strengths and how they complement each other. And so we've invested in learning throughout and very consistently with different conferences, different programs, with coaching, different resources. Over time, our investments, we've really made a focused effort in our investments in weighing those against the value they give to our clients. And so if things help us perform and help us provide more value quicker or better or nicer, more effectively, then we're very willing to invest in those. If things make us better and teach us more so that we can share more or allow us to be more sort of satisfy our natural curiosity, we invest in those. And so I think really thinking through it, I'm not sure our biggest investments have been in ourselves along the way with outside resources, and I'm not really sure that's changed. That's still a priority for us today.
Last question for you. I would like your advice on this. Unfortunately, your business, you lose all your relational capital, you lose all your clients, you lose all your followers. You have to rebuild this practice again. What do the first 90 days kind of look like if you were to rebuild this business? But you have all the experience that you do have right now.
And that was gonna be my question. At this point, we're so clear on our niche and our methodology that I would have loved to have had that clarity and that confidence early on. And having that now, knowing the impact that we've had, having that confidence, I think that first 90 days, instead of looking at what color are we going to have our logo and do we need a byline and what's our letterhead going to look like, it would be in trying to figure out where we can add the most value. And if we had zero name recognition, I mean, fortunately, we do have relationships, but if you picked us up and put us in a different state, different country, and we knew nobody, it would be providing organizations with the opportunity to see the value of our work. And so if we could do that, if that was lower cost work, if it was volunteering, just to show people what the value is and what the value of focusing on their people is, that would be our primary focus, is marketing through providing value. I think that now there are a variety of different ways of building relationships online and videos and the like. We are generally just not marketing people. That's neither one of our skill sets, which is probably an important skill set to always have in your business from early on. And maybe that would be it, is that we would bring somebody along. That was their primary focus. It's just not something that we're necessarily wired to do in the way that it seems to, marketing is conceptualized.
Howard, last question for you. How do people find you? How do people connect with you?
Yeah, they can go to our website, which is peoplecap.com, and it's people and then CAP, as just recognizing that people capital is really important. They can follow us on LinkedIn, either PeopleCap Advisors as an organization, or me as Howard Cleveland, or my partner, Meg Crosby. And any of those ways, and to the extent that there's interest in the book for high growth leaders, that's on the website as well, or available through Amazon. Running the Gauntlet, proven strategies for high growth leaders.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again, Howard, for just coming onto this podcast. Some things, other than realizing that we read the same books and all that on this podcast, I love how transparent you are about how you think about the business, the things that you feel like are challenges for you, but also the things that have really worked for you. Like, it's kind of funny. You mentioned the fundamentals of kind of like niching down and understanding who you help and the business fundamentals, or like concepts like profit first. I think that is insanely valuable to people listening to this as well. So I just really just want to thank you just for sharing all your knowledge on today's podcast as well. So thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. We had some incredible advisors along the way, and probably if we had really heeded and understood the value of what they were saying in the first 3 months, we could have saved ourselves some heartache and pain. But that's really our experience. There's a lot of it. It made us what we are and got us focused and allowed us to provide the service we do.
Yeah. Thank you again so much, Howard. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you. This has been great.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.